I realize that a lot of our African-American men need a lot of healing. And a lot of us aren't vulnerable enough to say that we need healing.
I think that, I was like watching myself and dealing with anxiety on that day.
Is that true? Did you know beforehand that you was gonna say no? I had a fear of bringing you on the yellow couch. Why? Because I had another episode where I had this guy, Derek Jackson, who women was like, he is toxic, he was this relationship guru and all this. I brought him on the podcast, women turned against me. So then that trauma came to me. But Holy Spirit, I feel like you're leading me to bring him on my podcast, but the trauma of just last year of bringing this other guy on there started making my doggone revenue on YouTube cut in half. I said, Lord, I just bought the new house. I don't have no time to be going through this, Jesus. God said, do it. He said, I don't want you ever seeking the approval of man. If I be for you, who can be against you? He says, so I want you to always keep your heart posture right.
Every second that escapes without you here with me keeps my heart anticipating till I finally see you.
When I made my vows, I told God that I was going to take care of this gift.
All my life I've been waiting for you. Girl, you know I've been praying for you. Been writing these love letters to you.
So I fight for that future in the present. You know what I'm saying?
That was good, Ken.
Congratulations to the ones who found love, for the hope and new beginnings from heaven above. I await my future wifey. I pray that it won't be too long, too long. Every second that it...
Welcome to the Dear Future Wifey podcast. I'm your host, Lateris R. Whitfield. Listen, are you still shacking up with us? If you're still shacking up with us, come on, can we get a commitment? Hit that subscription button and subscribe. Make sure you turn on your notification bell so you'll be notified about upcoming episodes. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and do me a favor. Hit that review button, leave a review, rate the episode 5 stars so people can be notified about the Dear Future Wifey podcast. And what happens on Apple Podcasts is it'll begin to recommend it to other people that may be looking for similar content. So thank you. This upcoming Friday, I'll be celebrating my 46th birthday. So on March the 29th, I'll be celebrating my birthday, and I want to kick off this week with this important episode. Y'all know I told y'all in January that God has given me this Adam, where are you mandate, so we can go reach the Adams in this world and begin to start healing our black man. Because y'all women been asking me, Lateris, how do I find my husband? Where is he? How do I find him? And so I realized that a lot of our African-American men need a lot of healing. And a lot of us aren't vulnerable enough to say that we need healing. We'll talk about, my daddy wasn't there for me, but we don't talk about the impact that has had on us to show up as the men that you desire for us to be. And so in this episode, all I ask is that you have an open ear and an open heart so that you can hear a vulnerable African-American man share his journey. And we also have his mom that's going to be accompanying him in the second segment. Y'all love her so much. And we just going to deep dive into some stuff to bring healing to our culture. So without further ado, welcome to the Dear Future Wifey podcast. My new homie, Clay Gravesande.
Hey, appreciate you having me here.
Man, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm taking a day at a time. Honestly, just navigating. I got my mom. She flew down to support me throughout all this. So I feel like we're getting back to it. It's nothing like getting your own, your mom's home cooked meal. Yeah. So that just kind of makes you feel like you're right at home,
So for people that don't know who you are, who are you? Why have you been thrusted into the spotlight over the past few months?
Yeah, well, I'm many things, but I'm Clay Gravesande, and most people are familiar with me from Love is Blind Season 6. So it just aired, and Man, I didn't know how many people watch the show.
This is an international show.
Yeah.
Did they ever let y'all know the numbers?
I've seen the numbers online. I didn't memorize it, but I know that we were probably the most streamed season for the show history. So,
yeah, y'all, your storyline brought a lot of emotions out of people. People felt very compelled to share their feelings towards you. I mean, just everything. They began to be very vocal. And so what I told you, I DM'd you when I watched the episode in the finale where you were very transparent. Tell people what happened in that finale episode.
Yeah, so the finale episode was the conclusion of the pretty much of the overall experiment. So in the finale episode, I think you saw a little bit of the bachelor party, and then we transitioned to the wedding, to our wedding scene. In this experiment, you have 6 weeks to pretty much choose, to pretty much say, hey, love is blind, and you go to the altar. Supposedly, you're supposed to go to the altar to make your decision. Of course, some cast members don't decide not to do that, but ultimately, what the cast and the producers want you to do is to make your decision at the altar while saying yes or no. Truly, is this experiment been good enough for you to say yes to marriage, which is something that's eternity? So I think for me in that finale episode, I was going through a lot. Like a lot of things were just, the real world of what goes on in society was actually coming to fruition. And I think that, I was like watching myself and dealing with anxiety on that day. The fact that, having my dad and my mom there and like honestly AD being there, and I wanted to show up for AD. A lot of people were like questioning like, well, why'd you wait all the way to the altar? When it's like, in our relationship, even when we was in the pods, I never thought that I would even get married. I was honestly like, this would be a good experiment for me to actually build an emotional connection, because I felt as though, my previous dating life, like I'm always leading with the physical. Like I'm always dating for a pleasurable state of mind instead of, trying to, date someone for some purpose. So my mom, my friends, and my sister, they're like, Clay, this would be a good idea for you to join the show and build an emotional connection. So, kind of watch the wedding scene. I did see that how I was self-aware. I was understanding what was going on in the situation, but I also saw myself battling my decisions on camera. And it was like weird because you're like a fly on the wall watching yourself. And I'm just like watching myself just have anxiety, watching myself just constantly go through this life-changing decision, like knowing that this is going to be a huge decision that's going to pretty much dictate, a large proportion of my life. And then, of course, I say no. And, essentially broke AD's heart, which, broke my heart as well. Just not really aware of the magnitude of the situation as well, I would say, I would admit, just had a tough time balancing like, hey, the TV show and reality, real life reality of it. Like a lot of times when I was with AD, I'm like, let's shake out. Is this really real? Is this real? And I struggle with that as well. So, a lot of people have been jumping on me, but I think I was a long-winded answer.
Yeah. No, I like it because you're giving reference to those that don't even know what we're talking about. And so, like you said, it's a 6-week experiment where you are tasked with a decision to marry somebody in 6 weeks. I want that to settle with people. 6 weeks. The fact that you met somebody sight unseen, you're in these pods where you're speaking to somebody on the other side of the wall. You don't know what they look like. You don't know, you're not supposed to ask anything physical, religion, race, all these things that what we choose people on. We naturally choose people on, let's see how tall they are. Let's see what their skin color is. Let's see, are you attracted to plus size women or a plus size man? All this stuff that we have, you're supposed to debunk all these ideologies and choose somebody based on a heart connection that you admittedly said you haven't had a heart connection with anybody else that you dated in the past, which is why your mom said, I encourage you to go do this. I want you to start dating differently. Reference. And then in that pod, that part takes place how long?
Pods, I would say, is about 10 days.
10 days.
Yeah.
So you have 10 days to speed date multiple women. How many women did you get to know during that in that pod experiment?
So it was 15 women that you're dating on the other side. I would say like strong connections, probably about 4.
So you have 4. So in 10 days, you date 15 people. You have the opportunity to date 15 people, form a connection with 4, and then by the end of that 10-day, propose to one.
Yep, that's correct.
Put a reference around it. Propose to one. Now you propose to one, sight unseen. You say, will you marry me? Y'all meet each other. You've already engaged at that point. You put the ring on their finger, boom, you're married. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're engaged at this point. And then y'all spend the other 4 weeks trying to work out the difficulties of relationships and meeting the family and all this. This is
we
like
go to a romantic getaway in Dominican Republic, then we move with each other in Charlotte, where you live with each other.
Then you actually move in with somebody. Yeah. So now y'all are cohabitating with each other that quick. So you go from...
You're making it sound crazy.
It is very crazy because that's the reason why I would never do anything like that. But I love the premise of it to actually connect with somebody emotionally because I'm a sapiosexual. And so I love the intellect of a woman. Mm-hmm. And so, but still, with all that being considered, I'm still not going to put myself in a situation where I am engaged to somebody sight unseen. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, then you're moving in with me and then we try to live together. I don't even agree with that. So I couldn't do that either. It just, none of that would work out for me. But I love the heart of the show. Now, but this is what you signed on to as the experiment. Were you fully aware that this is what you had gotten yourself into to actually say you have a decision to marry somebody? Because again, most people thought at the end of that 6 weeks, you're supposed to marry them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to give people reference to is you're supposed to marry them when the truth is you have a decision to marry them. Yeah. And that's what I want to bring context around that. So people are like, why would you do that? You're supposed to get married. No, you still have a decision to make. Mm-hmm. Just like everybody does when they get to that altar, they ask. Even in the traditional dating experiment and engagement and courtship, they ask you, do you take so-and-so to blah, 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 blah? Do you take such and such, such? At any point, we all still reserve the right to say no because the pastor or the officiant is asking us a question. And on that show, you still have the right to reserve that. You said, you didn't say that you wanted to break up with her. You just said you weren't ready to get married right then. And you also expressed that you desire to continue dating her, correct?
Correct.
And so in that moment, when you look at that, people question, why did you allow her to get all the way to that point? Mm-hmm. And that she said, played in her effing face, but thinking that you already knew that you wasn't going to say yes and break her heart right there at the altar. Yeah. Is that true? Did you know beforehand that you was going to say no?
No. I mean, you going through, so kind of giving a little context, we had the bachelor party. Yep. And then we had a week left. We had a week later where the wedding was going to happen. I think the wedding was actually on a Friday. The bachelor party that we had was actually on that Sunday. Give context what was going on. I had a work trip. So on that Monday, I had to go out to Raleigh, North Carolina, and pretty much try to close a deal. Then I had to go to Dallas, try to close another deal. We took off 3 weeks. I'm in corporate sales. I had to close these deals because if I didn't, the next quarter I would have been on a performance plan. Yep. So what that means in sales, put on a performance plan, that means it's going to be a lot of eyes on you. You got to close this deal.
And if you don't, you get fired. I've been in sales all my life when I was working corporate America.
Yep. So I had to close $1.6 million. And, just to fast forward, I ended up closing 2.2 that quarter.
Congratulations.
So I appreciate it.
So that bonus check looked good.
The bonus check was good. It was nice. But, you're going through a lot. So, with the bachelor scene and the wedding scene, I actually went out to go meet a client. So, I'm kind of facing a lot of pressures throughout this whole experiment because, I'm doing my 9 to 5. I'm also doing my side business. So in terms of my thought process of actually like yes or no, it was a lot going on where I would say I probably didn't do the best job of like honestly really thinking about the situation and like what I was into. Me and AD actually had a great relationship the last 2 weeks of our relationship. We put a lot of stuff aside. We felt like I wanted to tell AD like, hey, I wanted to get away from me feeling like this is a little bit fake with the TV. I want to get more into a realistic partnership. let's get away from the townhouse that Netflix and Love is Blind is trying to put us in, because that's an hour away from the things that I have to do in my livelihood. Let's actually move into my house where you will be at if we do get married. Let's be realistic with it. Once I feel like we kind of got into more of a realistic dating pattern, because the show does take you, to me, it's just not, the show gives you a lot of, conflict to see if like, hey, you're going to go through a lot when you're in the outside world to see like, hey, is your love really, does it waver? I think me and AD really did a good job of like combating against conflict. So a big reason why I went all the way to the altar, because our relationship was going so well the last 2 weeks. I felt like we really were getting to a point where it's like I could see her as my wife. And it just so happened when I got to the altar, I probably should have done a better job of just like critically analyzing the situation. And I got to the altar and I was just battling like, okay, I love AD. This is a girl I want to be with, but like, is this really giving marriage, or is it just giving, I love this girl, we should be in a relationship?
Yeah.
You know, because 6 weeks is like, I know people are like, hey, you signed up for this, but like, yeah, you could sign up for something. And it's just like when you think you could pass a test and then you study for it, you're like, damn, I don't know none of these answers,
And also other people did the same thing.
Yeah.
Other people was on the same show. They jumped ship before that.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
But you don't hear a lot of them talking, y'all jump ship. Y'all supposed to go to the altar. It was people jumping ship. And I've watched several seasons and it'd be rocky. And so what I love about what you just said is that you were still battling with the idea at the altar, but most people thought that you already had made up your mind. Why do you think people felt like you made up your mind prior to the altar? With hindsight being 2020, and you've been able to review yourself, like you said, like game tape, and look back at it and say, oh, that's what people, where there's some truth in what you feel like they felt that you were giving off.
Well, I mean, I can only look at it from a viewer perspective. And even when I watched it from a viewer perspective, I think the way how Netflix edited me, there was a lot of conversation about like, I'm going to cheat, all this stuff. And me bringing up, hey, this is stuff that I'm fearful of. I think people sort of saw it as like, oh, this guy isn't ready. AD run, he's a red flag. And a lot of those conversations was edited a little bit differently. So I think that, to give context clues, I just believe that, Netflix was kind of setting me up for me to say no, the way how they edited me. And I would say a lot of those conversations wasn't happening like that. Like even when people was making jokes like, oh, Clay, you kept saying you're going to cheat. I wasn't even saying that. I was saying that, have we built a foundation enough to know that this is something that's going to last for eternity? I don't want to cheat. What they did was they cut that first sentence off and just put the I don't want to cheat. So it just constantly flowed like that. And I felt as though that once they kind of knew the whole overall story, because I'm so transparent, it's very easy for you.
You gave him a lot to work with.
I gave him a lot to work with. So you could kind of put your storyline to everywhere you go. But like AD loved the fact that I was transparent. We battled through so many controversial stuff throughout the whole experiment, and we were able to combat it, which is why I felt like she deserves to be a wife, and she was a good woman for me. My complication with it was just the fact that, have we built enough for me to say this is something that could last forever? And, honestly, it just, to me, I don't think at that time when the experiment ended, I got all the answers to say, hey, this is legit 100% my wife. I think I still had a little bit of questions. And the only thing I say is that, hey, like, I get it's a show and I get the character that we represent. We're Black and you want to see Black couples, make it. And I'm sympathetic to that as well. But, my whole thing was like, is 6 weeks enough to actually make that decision? And I still have that question,
Yeah. You said you admired Brett. When you looked at Brett, you said, what did you see? When you watched the previous season and you saw that, and that was another moment of vulnerability where you admitted that you weren't in the place that you saw Brett in, or even some of the other guys that committed and said, I do at the altar in previous seasons. What resonated with you in that moment? Why was it important for you to give Brett his flowers in the reunion?
I made a comment about Brett when we were filming back when we moved in Charlotte. So I think that they kind of put that moment and had Brett there. So that was kind of orchestrated for me to have that moment with Brett. But, it was a genuine moment that I don't think he was prepared for. And everything that I said was genuine to him.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a good moment because I think he's a powerful brother. Like when I seen him on the screen, I felt as though that, he came off just very authentic, but like he knew what he wanted. And I looked at myself and looked at him and I said, man, like as a husband, as somebody that's supposed to be the leader of the household, I feel like Brett came in and he knew exactly what he wanted and he conquered that. Whereas me, I kind of had maybe a different perspective of going into the experiment of more so like, hey, I just want to see if this works, honestly, truthfully. And I will say this too. I've been transparent the whole way. From them interviewing me, from them recruiting me, to going through this process, I've been pretty consistent. But I think Brett came in, and I think as men, we have to be leaders and be able to understand what the direction of the relationship has to go. And I think that that's something I struggle with. So when I saw Brett, I had to give it up to him because I saw that that's something I was weak at, and I saw that was a strength of his. And it was just, to me, easily identifiable.
When you say you were transparent all the way, even in the interview process, what did you tell the producers at Netflix or, Kinetic or whatnot, when you were talking to them? What did you say to them your goal was in the show?
Well, they recruit you off of Instagram. So, like, it's not like you apply to go on Love is Blind. Like, they are pretty much have scouts, and they find you, and you have conversation with them. So, they ask you questions like, hey, how do you feel about this concept? And I was pretty transparent, like, it's a unique concept, but I don't know if that's gonna work for me because I like, I'm a physical guy.
Yep.
I think I was very transparent on like, hey, my dating style, I've always kind of leaned towards the physical. And I think for them, I was open to doing the experiment and going about it a different way. So I think that that's all they really kind of needed to see. Like, it wasn't a matter of me like convincing them like, oh, I'm so ready to be married right now. Like, I definitely wasn't doing that. I was kind of like, what the heck are y'all talking about?
Like, well, we could try it.
We could try it. I was kind of going with the flow. I wasn't, it wasn't, to me, it wasn't like the end all be all type of thing, and I felt like my energy wasn't giving off like desperate at all. So like, I was actually shocked that I even kept going to the next stage, because I was doing their call, then jumping on a client call, and then I'm like, okay, done with that, interview. Let me go to the next.
So you really didn't care whether or not you got on the show or not?
I try to get out of it.
At what point?
Well, when they told me I was officially a cast member,
you done tricked them all the way to the point where they said.
Well, I didn't. Well, I got cold feet because I was just like, oh damn, like they really want me. They want me to take off 3 weeks. So the biggest issue was me taking off 3 weeks for work.
Oh yeah, that'd be hard.
You got to give up your phone. You got to give up your laptop. And like I said, like, I'm an enterprise sales, so I have 12 clients, and I'm their face to the company, So like me taking off 3 weeks, I didn't really see how I could be able to do that, And I didn't really, they telling you the whole time through the process, like, hey, you're not officially a cast member, so I ain't telling my manager, you know what I'm saying? So a week and a half before we got to leave out, I'm like, hey, I need 3 weeks.
He's like, I'm gonna lose my job.
So it was a little muddy water. So when I told him like, yeah, I don't think I could do it. I was kind of like, all right, cool, I got that. I'm glad I got that over with. Then they called me back like, Clay, how can we make this work? We really want you on the show. And I'm just like, damn, all right, well, I did make this commitment, so, and also too, I talked to my mom, I talked to a couple of friends. I'm a component, I think that sometimes even if you don't want to do it, but it's organically happening, right, it's meant for me to be there, and I just felt like it was just too, not easy, but like the path was just like laid out for me to be on Love is Blind. Like,
right,
I wasn't putting that much effort into it, but it was just like, they were liking my personality, the doors are opening up, and like everybody I spoke to that who I loved, they said, Clay, this would be good for you. So it was almost like God was like reconfirming me like, hey, we want you to be on here. Me trying to get off the show. And then them telling me like, hey, Clay, well, if you can't take off 3 weeks, we can't have you on the show. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then them calling me back the next day and like, hey, how can we make this work? I think that
because you were still working. All right, so the 3 weeks, because you were still working while you were doing the show.
Yeah, I was still working. Mm-hmm.
But so that was one of the things of trying to make it work. Because them 10 days you couldn't work, and so they kind of met you kind of halfway then.
Mm-hmm. They get, well, not really. You have to take off the full 3 weeks because you want to be fair to the other cast members as well. So, and I understand that perspective.
Oh yeah, because you had to go on that retreat too.
Yeah, to go on the retreat. So like, my whole thing was like thinking like, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna make that retreat. So I'm gonna be gone for 10 days. And then honestly, I fell in love with AD. Like, I would say I did the experiment right. Like, in terms of it, like, was I thinking I was gonna get married? No, but I did the process right. I actually leaned into it. I found somebody, and me and AD really had like a spark. We had a connection, and I think she's provided a safe space for me to even be transparent. And allowed me to date differently, than I ever did before. So
by you having a type of woman that you pretty much date, what is that type?
I mean, it's not like a physical type, because I would say I dated, all different spectrums of like in terms of how they physically look.
What about ethnicities? Do you date like?
I date black. I don't think I've ever had a relationship with anybody. I've dated Spanish and black, but definitely mostly black.
So stuff that I be seeing on TikTok saying that this one lady is your ex-girlfriend and she was a white girl or whatever. Is that true? Yeah.
I ain't see that, but yeah. Damn, it's so many girls coming out the woodwork, but. My mom ain't never been no white girl, so.
It's the reality. So you said there's no particular type, but you date based on physical, which most men are like that. God made us physical beings, and so were you attracted to AD?
Yeah, I was attracted to AD. When I saw her, I was definitely attracted to her.
A lot of people said you always complimented on her body, but you would never say that she's pretty. You always just complimented on her body. Were you attracted to her face?
I was, and I said it actually. I thought it was interesting people said that, because you hear what you want to hear, and I understand that, because literally in the same scene where I said okay body, you could hear me whispering literally 2 minutes later, please do it. Where I said you're so beautiful, like you're looking so beautiful. I literally said it so many times. And, AD, if you ask AD, did I have a problem with how she physically looked? I would think she would say it was no problem, right? Because we both was around each other. There's no way I could fake that I wasn't attracted to her for that long.
Right.
We literally was around each other for so many times. And me and AD, I would say the best part of our relationship was our physical attributes, I was really impressed with the physical. I was good. We
saw it in that swimming pool scene.
I was like, yeah, I could do this, So, and this has nothing to do with her body. Like, honestly, her body is good. AD's best personality trait to me was our banter and our conversation and just how she was as a person, the personality. I fell in love with her personality before I saw her body, So
facts.
The point of the show, she didn't tell me what she looked. She did the process right. She said, Clay, I'm not telling you what I look like.
Because you want to know.
I wanted to know, and she said, no, I'm not gonna do that. And credit to her. And we fell in love the right way. I did not ask her about how she looked, and we didn't have those type of conversations until we got locked in. Then we kind of had a little fun in the pods. But
what about, was the emotional connection strong enough that if you saw her and she was say she weighed 300 pounds, do you feel like you had a solid heart space with her that you would have overlooked that?
Man, I'm gonna just say that
because the process, because physical is physical.
Physical is physical. Yeah, physical is physical. I haven't put myself in that mindset, because I think I was kind of saying that in the beginning. I felt like if you didn't feel like you was confident, if you was attractive, I gave you enough warning to say, all right, let me go with this guy.
Let me tap out. But it's good that you were attracted. You were attracted to AD because she's a very attractive woman.
Yes.
And what resonated with me the most about her, we're gonna give her flowers. This is International Women's Month, and so giving her flowers, the way she covered you. And the way that she will always build you up. When you felt like you were a little skeptical in areas, she'd be like, listen, I got you. How did that feel as a man to hear the woman that you were considering marrying being able to cover you like that? Or did that not resonate with you in the moment and you had to look at it, hindsight being 20/20?
No, it meant a lot, because at the end of the day, I was being vulnerable with her, and the fact that I felt comfortable with her to lay my truth on her, and it just makes you want to show up for that person. I knew that she had my back, which is why the wedding scene was very tough, because if to me, I almost felt like, I disrespected her in terms of how to, in terms of the trust that she had with me. So, it was tough watching back, but AD definitely was bigging me up. She helped me out through this whole process, and she was just a safe space for me to kind of let her know my truth. And the fact that I could let that be off, and she would even hear what I said and hey, reaffirm hey, Clay, this is not going to happen. So she was really good at listening. And like I said, a lot of our relationship, I think, was improved off camera, off of those conversations as well. because she was really good at like, hey, okay, this is how I'm feeling. You said this is how I feel. And then we might it might be hot that day, but then the next day we'll come back and say, hey, this is how I felt.
Yeah.
This is how I felt. I don't want to, I want to make sure I show up for you. And I think even you seen it, like even when I had the Matthew scene where I kind of blew up on her when I found out she was talking to Matt. And the next day I came back and was like, hey, at the end of the day, I realized that you are something worth fighting for. In my past, I would have ran away when I heard that you like another guy.
Yep.
But I'm willing to stay here and fight for you. And I feel like that was like a good representation of our relationship because we would have
what made you do that in the past? So you're battling with things that you would do in the past in real time. What made you decide? You heard that, you knew for a fact you would have ran away from that in the past. What made you double down and say, I'm on TV and I saw this, I'm putting my ego aside and I'm gonna say what you just said and fight for her? Why would you do that?
So that night at the hotel, I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I just kind of felt like I can't give up this easily. I just felt like it's the easy route would just be like, you know what, she's talking to another guy, I'm hurt, let me go back to the real world. She don't know what she's talking about. Like, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I think I'll be a better match than her than Matt would be. So let her make this mistake and she'll regret it later on, And
what week was that in real time?
This is probably the first week. So this is probably like day 4 of the pods. This is real early.
Yeah.
Because I would say me and AD was locked in after day 6 and we didn't date nobody else. And from day 6 to 10, it was just us, which is what they didn't even show a lot of that, the good parts of our relationship. But it was day 4, and honestly, I just felt like giving up would have been a weak option, and I felt like AD was something worth fighting for. So that's why I had to let her know, like, hey, I'm not giving up, and I understand I'm not doing things that is winning you over, but I want to, and I want to understand how I could be that man for you and stuff like that. And once I started communicating that and trying to understand, what she actually enjoyed and what she wanted out of a man, and I think our relationship got a lot better.
That sounds really interesting when you say day 4.
Mm-hmm.
Day 4, talking about, I'm not giving up on you, I'm going to fight for you. In real life, you meet a woman, in day 4, you be like, man, girl, you're like, we don't even have that desire like that on that level on day 4 with somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's not even a week.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's day 4. I've known you for 4 days, and I'm sitting there saying, I'm not willing to give up on you. Is that easy? It just sounds real throwed off. And so when you think about that in real time, but let's put reference around it. How many hours did y'all spend? If you were to look at it, how many hours did y'all spend cumulatively in those pods just talking to AD? How many hours you think you invested in that?
That's a good question. We had one date that was 4.5 hours, and then we had the day before was 3.5. I'll say it was probably about accumulation of about, in the pods, maybe, we had night days too, maybe like 15 to 20 hours talking. And that's another thing that puts reference around it. Most people, unless you because I'm a talker, if I'm gonna get on the phone with you, we're gonna talk and all that. We can have 3-4 hour conversations. But most women that I talk to, they say they find guys don't be wanting to talk like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And so for experimental purposes, I can understand how you can truly fall in love with somebody is because what takes, in 10 days or 3 days or 5 days or whatever it is, because from the cumulative hours invested in that person is synonymous with somebody that may have been talking for a month or 2.
Yeah.
And so you say, if I spend 20 hours intentional. It's like y'all are literally talking to each other. Y'all ain't got no phone to be like, oh yeah, what you say? Oh yeah, what you doing? I'm on Instagram right now. What, you said what? Oh yeah, I heard you. It's literally focused hours with somebody. That's what's so beautiful about the experiment, because it's focused energy talking to somebody, and y'all just sitting around in a room, twiddling your thumbs, kicking your legs, laying on the couch, playing with pillows in your lap, you know what I'm saying? And y'all are literally talking to somebody like that, which I find that's the most fascinating thing about it. And that's why I can give reference to understanding how you can fall in love, because it's intentional time with somebody.
Yeah.
But then you go look back, you go through this journey, and episode 10, how did you feel talking to her mom? Because her mom, that's why I said the women on this show, these Black women, I salute y'all. Y'all did an amazing job. I'm getting emotional when I even just
Yeah.
Think about how y'all showed up on the show. But her mom had this beautiful heart-to-heart moment with her daughter. And in that moment, she was still affirming you. She said, that baby's scared. But she looked at you as a good man. How did you feel when you came back to that table and you overheard them talking about you? How did that make you feel?
I felt a couple things. Like, I felt like grateful, the fact that she affirmed me, because she gave me a lot of gems that day. Like, I could just tell she enjoyed my spirit.
Yes.
And she was feeding into my spirit, and I could tell she really wanted to make it work. But also I felt scared as well because, you know, at that time when I met her mom, you know, me and AD, that was pretty much early into the experiment. And me and AD, I would say, it was a little rocky when we first got to Charlotte, you know, and so I was having thoughts of like, is this going to work at that time period?
What was making it rocky?
You know, just the transition from going from, you know, the pods, where it's like a little bit of a fairy tale in a sense, then going to DR where it's like, you know, we're just around each other. And then going to Charlotte where now I'm back into my real world, and, you know, you have, you know, the real world, you know, complications that just come on with in relationships. So, you know, I just kind of felt like, you know, this is a lot right now. I didn't see a clear path for us to get married at the time where I met her mom, but I still loved AD, you know, and I wasn't going to break up with her at that time period because it wasn't like nothing that she did. It was just like, you know, you're just struggling with different things when you're going through this accelerated process. So seeing her mom and how she affirmed me, it just like, you know, it made me like, okay, I need to get right, because her mom really likes me, and I could see myself, her being my mother-in-law, and, you know, I want to show up for her. And the fact that, you know, even watching AD, and just like, she had problems with the relationship, but she still spoke so much grace into me. And it's just like, okay, it was just hard watching some of those scenes because I didn't really watch AD when I wasn't filming with her. So like kind of hearing how her commentary was. So that was unique watching that as well.
I can imagine that was a very, like, to hear somebody speaking about you outside of your presence and be able to speak highly of you. And, you know, the mom is going to be team daughter, you know what I'm saying? But then she was looking at, and this is what is so important. I want to drop this to people. What's so important when you're talking about a couple that's trying to do life together, that you don't choose sides. Mm-hmm. You make the conversation about each other. You make the marriage the priority, not my daughter, not my son. You say, this is what's going to help y'all stay married. And what's so beautiful about it and heartbreaking at the same time is that you had these two women, your mom and her mom, having been through a divorce. And then here they are saying, but I still believe in marriage. And I still believe in y'all being able to have a marriage that is sustainable. But also what was so beautiful is that, gosh, this was so beautiful. What's so beautiful, they didn't speak down about the divorce. They spoke highly about the years they were able to be successful in marriage. Yeah. That's a healing conversation that most people may miss. Mm-hmm. They're saying, but listen, she said, but your mom, she was married for 24 years. That says a lot that she was able to stay for 24 years. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, wow, because most people are like, oh, it's a failure. Is it really a failure? Mm-hmm. The fact that you were able to produce these beautiful offspring, create legacy, to be able to challenge yourself in ways that you probably never felt like you could challenge yourself. When your heart is broken, can you still continue to recommit? Can you keep choosing somebody else over your own self? Which in today's society, we live in a very selfish mentality where it'd be like, I can do bad all by myself. Yeah. I don't need no man to do this. I don't need no woman. It's all this crazy rhetoric. That's why it's so hard for marriages to be sustainable. And the truth be told, I did a TED Talk in 2021, and it was talking about, you know, the 7-year itch. When you talked about your father stepping out on your mom year 7, well, that's a real thing. Most marriages end around year 7 because from a psychological standpoint, and it's called the 7-year itch. From a psychological standpoint, whatever decisions that we make that are long-term decisions, whether it's marriage, buying a house, got a car, whatever, psychologists believe that around the 7-year span, we start questioning our decision and wanting something new. We start saying, this house, I love this house, but I need a new house now. He was like, you was fine with that house. Around 7 years, that's what happened. That's why most marriages end around year 7. So while I don't okay infidelity, it's a psychological thing that happens when people start searching. And so to understand that and then start safeguarding our hearts, putting up proper boundaries when we know these things and say, okay, Laterra's just said, I never heard about the 7-year itch before. Okay, so that means that I need to start putting systems in place before I get to that 7-year thing so that I can have accountability and boundaries and safeguards so that when that 7-year itch come, I don't try to look for something to scratch it. 100%. And if I'm looking for it, I'm gonna look for my wife and say, I need you to scratch this. This is my vulnerable state that I'm in. And so, but I love the fact that you had these powerful women around you that kept pouring into you. When you look back, when you made that decision, did you think about when you were on that altar and you were speaking to her and you started sharing about, you wouldn't be right in making that decision right now. Yeah. Were you thinking about that, thinking about her mom, thinking about this? What was going on in your mind as you were curating these words to speak to her, which is the ultimate rejection that she took on? What was going on in your mind?
I thought my mom would understand ultimately if I was as transparent as I was, and I think ultimately she did understand that, and I'm sure she could speak on it in her own words on how she felt in that moment. I wasn't really thinking about disappointing anybody on my side. I think my side understand the man that I am, and I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. It was more so me feeling bad about, AD's side because, she did bring her family out there. She did have her friends out there, and I sympathize with the fact that it was embarrassment. It was embarrassing to go on national TV where I pretty much reject her. So, and like I said, I feel horrible about that. But I did feel when I made that decision, I did feel a little bit of a peace. I didn't feel like I made the wrong decision. I do feel like God was telling me you're not ready. I do feel like that, and I felt as though that. Me let her know that, hey, I'm not choosing your hand in marriage right now, but I still choose you, was me, making a responsible decision because at the end of the day, yeah, we could be married and the Black community would have been cheering and been happy, but internally, I don't think I was ready at that moment, I really don't. And, I think AD deserves someone to choose her every day. And the only thing I just hate is that, in my head, I was thinking that with me and AD, with us having such a good last 2 weeks and us not having issues, maybe we get in some type of relationship, but also too, I understand the magnitude of that moment and the embarrassment she probably went through. And it's not easy going back to a guy after, you've got, rejected in that sense. So I'm also sympathetic to what AD had to go through. But for me, I'm just going through my head and and I said at the reunion, but I was battling with my morality at the time. For me coming from an athlete, and I said it going kind of from just rock star life where, I was dating from a physical and pleasurable perspective. And now going to this part where marriage is very sacred and I don't want to have a divorce because I see how divorce splits households up. I wanted to make sure that I was aligned right and I could be the husband I could lead, my generation of kids and all that stuff. And I just felt like this was not the situation. This is essentially, I was like, this is a TV show, this is the TV show pushing me to go to this moment where in my heart, I don't feel like we are at the point right now where we could really say that we're ready for marriage. Maybe I should have came up with that conclusion before going to the altar. But like I said, you're kind of in this experiment, you're locked in and it's hard to get out of the reality. It's I can't really explain. It's
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's and you hear some people on reality shows, they refer to it as the wizards. Mm-hmm. They there's wizards behind the scene that's pushing you this. You got all these influences telling you this. Hey, we're trying to get this. Y'all going to be a star of the show. Let's do this. They're saying all this stuff to you, influencing you, telling you what to say, telling you, maybe you should do this. This would be better for you. Let's do this. And you okay. Oh, this is my first time in this space before, so I guess they know more than me. And so you're going, and the more you keep going further and further down that rabbit hole, you forget they're producing a show.
Yeah.
Their whole intents and purposes is to create good TV.
Yeah.
We forget that. Sometimes we get misled and be like, no, their job is to make sure they forge some great marriages out of this. That's not that. They're in entertainment industry. Yeah. That's just what it is. Because I was talking with a friend, and one of the couples, I don't even remember their name, but the girl that they got married, she has dark hair. What's their name?
Amy and Johnny.
Amy and Johnny. Don't remember their name.
Yeah.
They had a real stable relationship. It was real normal.
Yeah.
Don't remember them because it wasn't good TV.
Yeah.
So then we let that settle real quick. This is a little solid relationship. It just you'd be like, now what's their name? Who are they? Good. It's good relationship, good marriage. I would suppose, but I can't remember their names because it wasn't good TV. And so what happens is that the Wizards would highlight that, push y'all to these moments so that they can get this ultimate moment. And the ultimate moment, whether you said yes, it would have been great TV. And if you said no, it would have been even better TV. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I say that it's a TV show. And if we can extend grace, again, 6 weeks, marrying somebody. Let me ask you this real quick. Was this the most serious relationship you have ever been in?
I mean, I ain't never go to the altar in my other relationships. So.
Did you ever think about getting a ring in the past?
I never thought about getting a ring in the past. I mean, I had a wrong relationship where I felt as though that, like, I remember telling myself, I said, hey, if this is the one, and if it doesn't work, I remember I was like, God, if this doesn't work, then I'm probably never gonna get married. So and then you get the situation, I'm like, dang, did I curse myself? Like.
How long were y'all together?
We were together for a year and a half.
And in a year and a half, you said, this is the one.
I felt like who she was, the quality of who she was definitely given a wife, And
then at what stage in that year and a half, what month did you start believing that she was the one?
I feel like I knew it from the beginning. I felt like when I first started talking to her, even when my initial part of even getting in a relationship with a woman, like I would have to, before I say like, hey, you're my girlfriend, I have to think like, okay, could you be my wife?
Really? So you were marriage-minded back then?
I always feel like I'm been marriage-minded, especially with the women that I choose to be in a relationship with.
But the other ones, they just casually a war.
No, I mean, like there's definitely women that I fell in love with that I probably initially didn't think of them as a wife, but then you like, other factors kind of are so good, and you like, maybe
he said other factors are so good. That's real talk. So he said other facts so good. He's like, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna stand beside you. I'm gonna stand beside you. That's real talk. But then this other woman, then how did that end? Why didn't you go the next step and say, will you marry me? If you knew at the very beginning that she was somebody that had the qualities that you desired as a husband, and she had wifely characteristics, and you said, oh, I can see her that. Why didn't that work out?
Yes, I just feel like, I'm gonna just be honest, like I just feel like I sucked at relationships, but to be like transparent with it, I just felt as though that I kind of self-sabotaged it in the sense of how I grew up and like who I adopted myself to be. I feel like I got comfortable being like a single, kind of like a player in a sense. That was like my external, where I feel like my life took the better uphill when I adopted this persona, kind of more so like my dad, like a suave guy. I was an athlete, so I was always, I always felt like if I lost a girl, I always had another one.
24 hours.
It never really was the I guess the consequences of losing a woman wasn't really there, Like,
thank you, there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bro, when I told you done liberated some people, that's the truth. Because the consequences of losing, and you saw your dad play aside, step out in that episode when he was, in the finale episode when he talked to your mom and was like, yeah, I want him to get a good woman, like you said you had it. And you pretty much mismanaged it. You know what I'm saying? But it's because as men, myself included, we have a tendency the Bible says, when I was a boy, I spoke as a boy. And when I became a man, I put childish things behind. Infidelity is a childish behavior. Running through different women is a childish behavior because it shows a lack of discipline. But the reality is, the unfortunate thing is what's curated by our male leaders. We're going to say leaders, but they actually become misleaders. They lead you and say, bro, man, sow your royals, man. Just smash as many women as possible. That's what being a man is. Yeah. Be a man. You know, boys will be boys. Do this. And they curate this toxic masculinity that teaches us, and matter of fact, rewards us for having sex with multiple women and mismanaging their hearts. They don't even frown, men don't even really frown upon other men that cheat on their wives. They be like, oh, a man gonna be a man. I mean, it's not normal for a man to be with one woman.
100%.
They start saying stuff like that. So then as men, we go,
it's normalized.
Yeah, it's normal. Like, I think I'm trying to do too much if I'm actually trying to settle with one woman because my flesh is telling me something different.
100%.
Instead of warring against our flesh and say, I'm putting my flesh under subjection, we go, see, that's why I have this natural propensity to get a lineup of women, instead of saying that's the devil trying to thwart my legacy, that I'm about to take something temporal and that can shift my legacy just by one decision that I made. That's why I want to give reference, and that's the reason why I needed you on this podcast, because you're at a state of healing. You're in this journey, and you're at this place where you say, you know what? If God gonna use me to be the poster child of somebody that left somebody at the altar, I'm gonna turn that thing around for God's glory. So I salute you, King.
Thank you.
And so that's why if you hadn't made that decision, we wouldn't be sitting here talking. I would have had no interest to talk to you about nothing. But because you were so vulnerable and I connect with that vulnerability, then I say, this is a conversation worth having. Yeah. And so as you found yourself in this position, and we talked about it real quickly on that live, what has made you be willing to sit before people, do these interviews? You was on Tamron Hall. You've been on this press run, doing some stuff time to time, which people may be negative. I've seen people be negative about that. Oh, he just doing this for attention. I'm like, shut up. So the reality is like, anyway, I'm not gonna give space to that because I get real upset about that. What has made you decide to step out of the shadows and not just hide in your house and wait for this blows over until the next season of Love is Blind?
Well, I was quiet the whole time when the show was coming out, so I'm like, I didn't really get to say my piece. I didn't, doing Instagram and ask me questions, and people don't really get to see my perspective. And I also feel like with Netflix, the way how they kind of edited me, I felt as though I spoke a lot of light into the Black community that wasn't really highlighted in the air. So I wanted to get out here and honestly just say, like, because I have conversations with men all the time, I resonate exactly what you said. It's kind of normalized in the men's society where it's like, well, cheating ain't the biggest deal, but I have so many women in my life that matter to me, and I understand how infidelity does matter. Teach. So I'm always in a weird space, and I'm almost rather not be in a relationship so I don't mess anyone up, because I understand how infidelity could affect a woman. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm already kind of looked as a player anyway, so it's more comfortable for me to be single. It's the easier route.
And the women know what they're getting into. It ain't like you hide. And you said that you're really blunt. You let them know this is what it is, and then they sign on for it. And so I love that you said that you value marriage so much that you said, hey, I'd rather embrace this where, I'm not forsaking my vows, so to speak. Yeah. Why is marriage so important to you?
When, me growing up and seeing my parents' marriage, and, I just felt like it was power in the Black community when you got your mom and your dad and you got kids and it's just like your family. Like, I remember going on like family vacations and just like the pride I had in my family. And like, it just, to me, I think, and I'm well read too. So, I read the Willie Lynch theory, the breaking the curse of Willie Lynch, and understanding like how I do believe in societal, today it was meant to break up the Black household with the husband and the wife, just from, them when we were slaves and how the male gets sold right in front of the wife to, demasculate the male.
Or the woman gets raped in front of the man.
Or the man, exactly. Or the woman gets raped in front of the man. And then even like in the 80s when they used to change up the publication of magazines where they'll show women that it's better to be, alone and independent than rather to have a man with you. And then you look at the Black household and our divorce rate, being high, and I just felt like this has always been like indoctrinated. So, this is a big reason why I want to come on these platforms and kind of talk, because, for Black men, I do believe we need to have a safe space to be vulnerable and kind of, say like, hey, this is the things that we struggle with. And for Black women to hear us out, because I'm telling you, Black men want to marry Black women. Like, it's just that we need to have that space where we can kind of let you know the things that we struggle with. Like, hey, I was a guy that you would say, that most women would say, hey, this is what I want. They say, like, I want a guy that's 6 foot. Well, I'm 6 foot. You want a guy making over 6 figures? Well, I'm making over 6 figures. But that comes with stuff. Like like other women see that as well. And
exactly.
There's a lot of attention, a lot of temptation that I'm going through on an everyday basis. And I have to be healed in order to be a right leader. And this is me just saying that, hey, me taking the path and me going this pathway and hearing some of the, because I'm in the social media world. So hearing what women want and me trying to, fulfill that and be this provider, it has taken another plateau, because that's put me in a light where women see me as attractive and it's comfortable for me to be in this single perspective. So now to get into a point where now I have to be a husband, that could be a difficult transition that you have to make.
Thank you for being honest about that, because that's so true. I always say that. I say these women, they want this type of guy and this type of guy, not realizing you're going. And I don't like to give credit to this guy, God rest his soul, but he had this huge platform. I'm not going to say his name, but he had this huge platform, and he was talking about, how women want the guy that you just described. And he said, you realize you're talking about like anywhere from 3 to 5% of Black men earning 6 figures. You know what I'm saying? And now all you women want this man at this height, they're making this money and all that type of stuff. Like, what do you think the odds of you getting that dude? And then what you talked about, the reality is that being that dude, when that dude has that level of access and variety to choose from, what will enthrall him to make a decision to settle down with one? That's a whole challenging conundrum. It's just challenging. And so that's the reason why we got to keep speaking about, men finding value in what you just said that you were raised in. But most men were unfortunate. You were raised seeing that and still struggle. You were raised seeing a mom and dad in the household and still struggle creating that for yourself. Think about the Black man that never even saw that. And then he's this guy that's making his money, has these choices. He like, I ain't never getting married. That's why you hear them say that, man, I ain't finna get married. I'll never get married. Why would I do that? And they start bringing rhetoric like men lose in marriage. Why would you get married and then I got to give half my money away if it goes wrong? It's always about if it goes wrong. It's never about, how would it be to have a beautiful woman that supports me, that wipe my behind if I can't wipe it myself because I'm sick? What does it feel like to have a woman that loves me unconditionally? What does it feel like to have kids that are raised in a home and not in baby mama, baby daddy, going to child support court, fighting? What would it feel like to have that? What would it feel like to no longer be searching and you found the one for you and you can keep pouring and cultivating that woman and washing that woman with the water of the word? What would that feel like? But we don't hear men talk like that. We hear men like, on the day we get married, we hear our brothers tell you, yeah, you got the old ball and chain on you, brother. Now you about to be out the game. You out the game, my brother. Well, you done left them all to me now. Now I got all your women. Like, really? Women be like, oh, I'm so proud of you. You're just a beautiful bride.
It's like a funeral for men.
It's a funeral for men and a wedding for women. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy. And that's what women don't know, is that we look at it like, I'm giving up so much. And when we look at it, you ain't giving up nothing. You really not. You're actually being rewarded with the greatest gift that God can ever give you, because God models his relationship with us like marriage. He says, we are the bride of Christ. And so if you ever want to get close to God, say I do to the person that God brought into your life. And that's how you can replicate. The Bible says that one can chase away 1,000, two can set 10,000 demons to flight. That's what you get in power. And so, but we don't hear that. We don't hear none of that. One of the things that I do want to celebrate you for is what you just talked about what you've read about the Willie Lynch stuff. And to give people reference, I grew up watching Good Times, but Esther Rolle, they want to have Good Times where it was just Esther Roll. It was just her. So they wanted her to be a single woman living in the hood. And she said, I'm not gonna allow y'all to perpetuate this. You're gonna bring me a husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's where James came in. She said, I'm gonna use the power, because she was a big deal, Broadway star. And she said, listen, y'all gotta bring me a husband. So they brought James, where I got the privilege of watching this family that didn't have much, but they had a relationship, they had marriage, you know. So I was watching this and I was like, wow, because I grew up poor, so I could identify with them, you know. So I was like, wow, this is amazing, you know what I'm saying? So I had Good Times on one hand, and then I had the Cosby Show on another, you know. And I'm like, these people are affluent, they're smart, a doctor and an attorney, and then Good Times, they were struggling the projects, can't never get out of it. But these other people got this great brownstone and they balling. So it was just a great dynamic to see what marriage looks like, whether you're a basing or a bounding, whether you have money or you're broke or whatever. And so I love that my childhood was afforded that opportunity. Where are you at now in your dating journey? Have you just taken a break? Or have you said, hey, I'm out there? Or are you still chasing AD? You say, I want AD, I'm gonna do whatever I can to win over. Where are you at?
I'm actually taking a break. I'm being focused on my healing journey. I got a new therapist now, and she's been really good. I see her once a week. We sit up for an hour. She gives me behavioral changes. She gives me homework. So whenever I do the session, I talk about the homework. And one of the things I think that's really unique that she's doing, I think that would probably be good for Black men, is like she's having me dig deep into my childhood. Because when you go into your childhood, that's where a lot of the trauma resonates from. So like, hey, Clay, who did you want to be growing up? You know, what really fulfills that childlike feeling? You know, for me, I've kind of, like I said, adopted this persona, and I've been chasing something, but it's like, is that really what feeds my inner child? This success that I've been chasing, this money and how I want to be looked at, is that really it feeds my ego, but is it feeding my inner child?
Good.
So going back into that trauma and actually understanding, okay, things that I love, and you know, even having my family even supporting me during this whole process of me not going back into the streets and like trying to talk to women, me just kind of being in my foundation of my family and saying like, wow, this is all I need, you know. So, you know, retraining my brain to make me believe that, hey, I don't need to find love with other women. You know, I just need to find love in my foundation. And with that being said, if I sit still and I'm not chasing stuff, and I go through this path right, and I move differently, then God will bring me a wife as well. So, you know, I'm trying to change things up and be about what I said I wanted to do. And you know, I'm just trying to walk the good road, honestly.
So when you look back at your childhood, what was the things when you aspired to be an adult? What was some things as a child that fulfilled you?
So I was big in track and field. And, you know, just being able to help kids out, being able to assist. I always remember my high school coach changed my life because he saw something in me that I felt like no one else saw in me. He saw me being a star. And I always envisioned myself being a star because I felt like when I was a kid, you know, I was a little bit overlooked in certain aspects. So
what aspect?
Well, I wasn't the coolest guy, I would say, in elementary and stuff like that. And then, you know, watching my dad, he was always the coolest guy. And it's like, I'm my dad's son, but it's like, I just knew I wasn't as cool as my dad. Like, you know, he just had the swag about him. And I was just like, I'm like, dang, I'm a little bit of a nerd, you know? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really think and like, I wasn't, you know, girls wasn't that, you know, it wasn't
checking for you like
they
that.
weren't checking for me like that. And I saw the power that men had in my school when they had girls that wanted them, you know, like the athlete, you know. So you know, I got this little golf club, like, you know, people have that, like the little toys, like some people got like a magic blanket or something like that. Like I had this like little plastic golf club, and I used to just close my door, I just throw it up in the air, and all I do is manifest and imagine my life. And I used to manifest, you know, me being this guy that women liked, me being this guy that was desirable, me being this guy that was a star athlete. And honestly, it all came true. Like, it all came true.
So you started doing that at what age?
Man, you know, my mom could probably contest this, but I don't know, like maybe 6, 7, you know, like me just wanting to be this larger than life, you know, figure just to be seen, you know what I'm saying? And because I was seen in my household, not like I got attention in my household, but like, you know, when I would leave the house, going to the, you know, my real world, because I'm spending majority of time in school. Yeah. And it's just like not feeling like I was like, you know, not getting the attention that you feel like, you know, that would make you feel fulfilled, you know? So as a child, like these are things that I went through. And now I can understand, like, okay, well, I adopted this player persona because I wasn't being seen, you know? But like, I am seen, you know, people do see me. So like, why do I have to still keep on carrying this, you know, defense mechanism in a sense?
You know what's so cool? And that I don't know if women really understand it. Like you just said it, even as little boys, our whole success is based around girls.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't about grades. It ain't about, I just want to be the one that girls like. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's the lion in us. It's the hunter. Can girls like us? We measure our value based upon, do girls want us? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one that won't, but she the only one and don't nobody want her. You know what I'm saying? I want the star cheerleader. I want the star. I want that one because look at him. He gets her that wants him. Mm-hmm. And we measure ourselves by women's attention.
Yeah, we do.
Like all day. It just, and you just said that broken boy was like, I want to be the girl. I want the girls. And then you said to be the athlete in this. That's how you get to the girls. Mm-hmm. And then when you watch the rap videos, you got these grown men sit up there with the cars, the jury, but a bunch of girls. Mm-hmm. You don't see a rap video with one woman sitting there talking about this, my boo. You know, you're sitting up there. It's like, no, that's the old 90s R&B where you have the one woman and the several guys that if it's a group, boys and men, they chasing after the one woman or whatever. Or Michael Jackson, the way you make me feel. He chasing the girl all through puddles of water and all that. Yeah. But now this toxic masculinity, it be a bunch of half-dressed, half-naked women all around you. And then as boys, we look at it and be like, I want that. Mm-hmm. He got 20 naked women around him and fancy cars and stuff. If I can get some nice cars, I can get the girl. Yep. If I can get the gold chains, I can get the girl. Mm-hmm. And I can get lots of girls. And we're brainwashed to want lots of them and not one. And that's what the imagery that we're sold through years. So thank you. I believe that you brought a lot of references. Anything that you like to share before I bring your mom to the set?
You know, my mom, like I said, I could talk to her about anything with her being here. So, like, let her come on because, you know, I'll pretty much give it up just like I would if she wasn't here. You know?
Well, good. Well, listen, next segment, I'm finna bring on Margarita. She is a gem, and she's about to drop some gems. But listen, I have this program that's about to drop. Take a look at this commercial, this brief little promo about that.
Is there a way of avoiding heartbreak? You said stay single. Is that statement true if you sincerely desire marriage? That's actually breaking your own heart. You can only imagine how many emails, DMs, or comments I receive with people asking me my opinion on matters of the heart. Well, on Monday, April the 15th, in celebration of the 4-year anniversary of the beloved Dear Future Wifey podcast, I'll be going live for a free event that's truly going to be life-changing. We'll hear from past guests, and for those of us who still desire marriage, I have something big to announce. Register at identifind.com. That's IDENTI find, FIND.com.
So, man, we just got finished completing this dynamic segment with Clay. And so a lot of y'all have been DMing me. You said you wanted to talk, you wanted me to have a conversation with his mom. And so welcome to the Dear Future Wifey podcast. My new homie, Margarita Gravesande. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Listen, man, you have been thrusted in this position. You were just minding your own business, living a private life. And now people want to interview you on daytime talk shows and have you on podcasts and stuff like that. How does that feel about you being such a private person?
It feels good because I know that I'm doing a lot of good for a lot of people that need some healing based on a lot of DMs that I received. The other part of it is I do like my privacy, and I've always liked my privacy. I've been a private person. So now, excuse me, it's just now everyone knows, you know, my business. And sometimes it's a little embarrassing, but, you know, I got to take it with a grain of salt because this is the new.
So let's talk about your generation, because your generation, you know, it's what happens in this house stays in this house.
Absolutely.
And so with this world of social media, this can be in direct opposition to everything that you know to be true. So how have you been able to manage that? Your family business, the whole world, internationally, the world knows about. How have you been able to reconcile that?
It's hard because, like I said, I am very private. I have 10 fingers, and I think I have 4 people that pretty much knew my entire story. I try to take it one day at a time and try to understand that what Clayton kind of said, it was something that needed to be said.
Yeah. In reference, what did he say exactly that needed to be said?
He said that, his father cheated like seven years into the marriage, and there was a lot of infidelity, and he actually, went on some of these trips with him, when he, when they were out, and I didn't know that. And part of being a mom, you kind of like do this protection, and your kids, and you're like, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
How did I know that? And so I was hurt, but then I'm like jumping into what happened, how did it happen, and when did it happen?
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was hard hearing it, but also I'm glad that he was able to unpack it, because you shouldn't live with that inside. We are parents, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have to take my burden on, because God already served. He already gave his life, so he needs to leave it. And I think he's already unpacked it, and he's doing the work. And I just want to say I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
One of the things that people may not know is that you live in New Jersey.
Yes.
You spent how long with Clay? Because even while you're here now you're finally about to go home. And so when I booked y'all flight, had to book the flight from North Carolina. And then when you leave Dallas, you're going to go to New Jersey.
Yes.
How long have you been spending with Clay?
I've been here almost a month.
So you were with Clay a month. What made you decide to say, hey, let me go spend some time to be with my baby boy?
Because after he got done, when the Love is Blind aired, which was February 14th, it was just shocking, everything that was happening. I got to see how he was acting, or how they were portraying him. And me understanding a little bit about television, I'm like, what happened in the beginning and what happened in the end?
Yeah.
Because something happened. And some
because you know your son too.
Yeah, some editing, some splicing, something happened. And I didn't like how he was just looking. I saw that he was very nervous. And I didn't really know how much he was really suffering with anxiety. I didn't know that. I'm a mom, and I have 4 children, and I have a bonus child that I raised, my sister's son.
Okay.
She's passed away, but I raised him through college. And my second son, he's on the autism spectrum, doing very well.
Good.
So Clay, being the firstborn, doing everything right, you're kind of like, okay, I can shift my energy to my other child. And I didn't know he was really struggling with the anxiety. But when you watch Love is Blind, you were able to see that. Mm-hmm. And I was able to see things that people in the comments said was weird, or why is he doing that? And that was his way of trying to regroup, get back on track. And I know that because of taking care of a child who has disabilities.
Yes.
And I didn't like the way how they kind of portrayed him, because he is someone who wanted to do so much for the community, and none of that was shown at all. And so it hurt me to see that, but it also, like you said, bring it back. I come from a different era, and we don't talk about what goes on in the household stays in the household, which is not a good thing to do because we never actually do any healing.
Facts.
And unfortunately, the same trauma passes down from generation to generation until someone says, stop, I'm not going to go there.
Clay said you were one of the people that encouraged him to go on Love Is Blind. Why?
Well, true story. I really thought it was Married at First Sight.
That'd have been even worse.
Well,
he just walked right up there and said, "Here's my wife."
The reason why I thought it was Married at First Sight.
That would have been. Hold on, let's just imagine that for a minute. A person that walked away that said I couldn't get married, put him straight up there at the altar to get married. Can you imagine that?
I could.
What would that be like, Margarita?
The thing is, Married at First Sight, they have doctors.
Yeah.
They have therapists. They have people that's coaching these young people to make the decision, to figure out, what's going on. If you're having a issue with finance, they help you to navigate that. If you're having an issue with anxieties, they have that. If you're having issues with physical contact, they have doctors, therapists, people that are professionals. And I like the show because I like the science behind it. And then when he said Love Is Blind, and then he said, Mom, that's not the show.
Mom, you set me up for the wrong show.
Like, what?
And by then I was already like a cast member.
Sorry.
He said, sorry. But think about that. So, Clay, you know anything about Love Is Blind? I mean, not Love Is Blind, Married at First Sight.
Well, I mean, I know the concept of it, but I never watched it.
So what do you know the concept to be?
I think that they interview you to match you up, and then like you pretty much don't see who you're going to marry, and then see her, I guess, when I propose or
you stand. No, you know at the altar.
Yeah,
right.
So you standing right here, and your wife is coming down the aisle.
And I never seen her before.
Never seen her before.
That's crazy.
And then you're getting married. Not considering marriage, you're getting married, and then you consider later if you want a divorce. So
I mean, now you talked about my Love Is Blind experience being crazy. That sounds even crazy.
I didn't really think it was crazy. I thought it was okay, only because I trust the doctors, the therapists, the one of the guys is a pastor.
Yeah.
And if you
Pastor
are
Kyle.
if you are writing your bio and you have everything listed, I am trusting
that they're going to match you properly.
That they're going to match you properly. Not match you where, okay, I'm looking for someone with a certain color skin, physical. No, but really that maybe where I'm weak, this person is strong.
Right.
Where I'm not able to articulate because I'm not a good communicator, that person loves to communicate. So it's a balance. And that's what life is. It's a balance. You want someone to be able to be your ride or die. And maybe that person might not be just like you. So
right.
That's why I liked.
It's interesting because the very thing that scared him is marriage, and you're starting off in his greatest fear. It's like, and you're actually married. And then I had Gil, since you're a fan of Married at First Sight. Do you remember Gil Cuero?
Yes.
So Gil was on my podcast, and the trauma that he went through is that the interesting thing about, and to educate Clay on this, is that with Married at First Sight, they'll listen to the things that you desire and want, but then they're not going to take everything you say into consideration. They go, I know you want a woman that may be built like this or look like this. We're going to get you a woman because what you keep trying to date your type, that may not be the best for you. We're going to find somebody that has core principles that help bring out the best in you. And then we're going to put you together, but they may not look as your preference in this.
Right.
And for instance, with Gil, Mirla said that I don't like bald-headed men at all. I don't like bald-headed men. Right. And I don't like men that are cheap. She's a big spender. She's got the designer, everything. Right. They put her with him, and some things that he didn't like, a woman that was all, materialistic, they put them together and say, we're going to make it work. But you're together, married at the altar, and then you decide whether or not you're going to stay married. They stay married shortly after the experiment.
Yeah,
they broke up.
They broke up.
Like literally before the reunion show, and Gil was heartbroken because Gil went into that thing. I want to be married. The same thing. I wasn't dating right or whatever. I want to get married, and was heartbroken. And he came on the podcast the day that that when Love Is Blind aired. He wasn't big on social media. He may have had about 1,100, 1,200 followers. When that episode dropped where his heart was shattered, he grew to 100,000 that one day. Wow. And then his DMs just been popping. Women like, hey, which I want to ask you, Clay, your DMs be popping? I know you women in your DMs, don't they?
I mean, it's they there, but I haven't been like responding.
You don't respond to them?
I just feel like if I respond to some of the DMs, it's like I'm jumping right back into the same pattern. Right. So like I said, I'm just trying to stay out of it and really kind of walk the good fight, So.
Look at Clay, you trying to grow. Look at you.
I'm trying to stay with the temptation, man.
That's good.
Like, honestly, like, all right, cool. Temptation's right there. If I can navigate this where my, the engagement is so high and like so many people are seeing my page, if I could like withstand the temptation now, then I'll be able to withstand it when it's not so high,
So it's a different level of temptation right now, ain't it? Yeah, because you said you was an athlete, you got that. Explain the difference between that level as being an athlete and this right now, TV.
Well, I ran track and field. So track and field, we're not like football and basketball where everybody in the campus is like checking for us. But like in the track and field world, I would have to go to my environment and then I would feel desire. Also, too, like our track and field team, we did pretty well in the school community. So we always felt like, in my local environment, people knew me, and it was like a little local celebrity.
Yeah, local celebrity.
Yeah, a little local celebrity. But like now, like I'm walking around, like people notice me. Like I remember in New York, I'm just walking, and a guy just like pulls over his car, like, "Yo, you Clay?" And like, "Let me take a selfie with you." Yeah. I'm like, "This is crazy." I just feel like right now, so much temptation going on, so many like women throwing themselves at me. I just feel like if I could like withstand and not just go back into the same patterns and just like try to hook up with so many women, I feel like it's preparing me to be a husband now,
That's right. Yeah. The test.
Yeah.
Clay.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, man. I'm finna break down crying talking to my king over there. Yeah. Because you're talking about what's real. You're talking about the real live current temptation that's going on. And this, I'm trying not to preach. You went through this trying experiment that got you ready to be a husband. And that's why I said it was okay that you didn't say yes. Mm. Sometimes, and I had to reframe rejection in my own mind. Oftentimes we look at rejection as the greatest disappointment that we could ever endure. But oftentimes rejection is redirection. Rejection is protection. And so if we reframe it like that and say, you know what, God, if you ultimately you said your plans are good for me and not of evil, then if someone doesn't accept me because I like them or I want them or the relationship doesn't go where I thought it should go, and I've totally surrendered my life to you and say, God, order my steps, and my steps that I'm walking in has me change directions because the person is receiving me, then did God make a mistake? Or if we're fully submitted in God, then we say, my ways, your ways are not my ways, and your thoughts are not my thoughts, and I'm going to trust you in this process. Mm-hmm. And so I love what you're saying right now, because you're saying that even in this moment that you went through, and like I said, I don't want to minimize the pain that AD went through. I did an episode, Clay, on that I released January the 4th of last year, where I was very vulnerable. I did an episode called Healing from Heartbreak, where a woman I thought I was going to marry, her childhood trauma came up. And in December the 27th of 2022, we were dating for a few months, about 3 months to be exact. And she said, I can't marry you, right? I gotta go to therapy. And we was going through premarital counseling and all that type of stuff. And I was like, what? And it crushed me. But then God told me, he was like, Lateris, would you rather it happen right now? Or would you rather it happen at the altar? Or would you rather happen while you're married and she just walks away? She doesn't come home one day and you like, what happened? All that trauma came up and led her and made her run away. That's the reason why I salute you for being a man and saying you wasn't ready. And as painful as that was for AD, you did something that ultimately protected her and protected you and protected the sanctity of marriage. What do you think about the decision when you watched your son in real time? Because I could see hurt visible on your face, but you also affirmed him in the process. You hugged AD. What did you think when your son made that tough decision?
Well, I was very touched, and I was looking at God working, and I was able to see him moving because AD and him did have great chemistry together. And I'm not just talking about the physical. I'm just talking about they kind of knew each other. And I always said, what would have happened if he was able to have time away from the cameras? Because there's a lot that you have to do, and your adrenaline is pumping. You're doing takes over and over again. Sometimes you're waiting, for your scene to actually happen. And what would have happened if time was allocated? And sometimes we want things quick,
yes,
expeditiously, but God is like saying, it's not the right time.
Yes.
It's not the right time. And so although he wasn't able to give her a yes, I thought, I felt her hurt, and that's why I went over to embrace her. I felt her mom's disappointment. And like Clay stated, she had her family and her friends there. And yes, it's an embarrassment, but also if he was just given the time, because he said up there about the time.
Yeah.
But I understand, like she had said in one of the episodes, she's not interested in being a long-term fiance. And I understand that. But I also have to say that I saw God. I saw God moving because there was just things that was occurring up there that I did not understand. And one thing was the pastor or the officiator, like when he read the Proverbs 3:5, and I was reading it over to, I was like, that's normally not a wedding verse. And that's be still, wait. Don't jump in front of yourself. Wait for me. And I just
wow.
I didn't understand it. And after it aired, and I told Clay, I said, God was there. I said, he was there right between you. AD was here. You were there, but he was right in the middle. And that's what I believe. So again, how did I feel? I felt emotionally sad and disappointed for her because I know she was upset, but I also felt proud for my son.
Yeah. You know how women and mothers, you can see, somebody being your daughter-in-law. When you met her, did you feel like that was your daughter-in-law?
I'm not going to say I felt automatically that was my daughter-in-law because if you know who I am, I don't give titles and accolades. I just don't.
You say, I see it when I see it.
No, I do. But my whole thing is that character means a lot to me. Okay. Accountability means a lot to me. What do you say? And then what do I see based on that say? Is that actions matching that? So I didn't get to know her, for a long period of time. I met her for the first time at the restaurant. A lot of things wasn't aired from the restaurant. Okay. And I'm someone who will always come with some questions. And that's just how I'm a mom. And when I was married, someone gave me some questions. And they just both seemed like they were, struggling on some things. And I just said, what do you want? More importantly, what don't you want?
So what questions were left on the cutting floor?
I wanted to know, I told them both to go back and do some journal. Write down what you want versus what don't you want. And when you get to what you don't want, I think you both will have your answer.
She did say that.
They didn't air that part.
What in the that's profound. Where'd you get that from?
You know what? Everyone knows, been married close to almost 24 years. Okay. And I asked for a lot of things from God, and I got them. I said I wanted to be married. I wanted all my children to have the same last name because my siblings and I, we don't have the same last name. I wanted a beautiful house, check mark. I wanted a beautiful car, check mark. I wanted an awesome job, check mark. And I never asked for love because I didn't know what love looked like. I didn't know what love was supposed to be. And I didn't know I was supposed to ask for that, you know? And so when he calls me and say, Mom, I'm engaged, I scratched my head. I was like at the doctor's point. I was like, what? I said, I'll talk to you later. Right?
Yeah.
Did she just tell you I could talk to him later?
She didn't really pour into me like, make it. It wasn't the most exciting phone call.
Because I didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean? I haven't heard from you? You know what? Yeah. And then he's like, I'm engaged. I was like, well, I'm at the doctor. You have to call me later.
He was like, wow, that didn't go the way I planned.
Right. And then finally I get him private. So I talk to him privately. But when I first met AD, beautiful young lady, and very well spoken. And I did not have anything negative to say to her, or even, I did have a lot of positive, but I wanted to make sure I said, what do you want? And I wanted to say that because no one asked me, no one was giving me that guidance.
That's good.
And I just don't know if they both did anything with it.
Did you ever write in the journal that she told you to write in?
No. But AD didn't either. But we did do different things. Like AD did this thing where she wrote out things that she loved about me.
That's excellent.
So I thought that was such an excellent gift. And we did more personal stuff where we would play little card games where you kind of get more into who we are and what we want. But so we didn't do it we did it the millennial way, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what
There
about
you go.
So what about when she said that she had made all this stuff and laid it on the counter, but you didn't even touch it? Where she
No, I did touch it eventually. I think when the day that she
eventually.
Yeah. But the day that she created it, I honestly crashed on the couch. There's really no excuse. But I was at the lake. We filmed probably 5 days a week when we was in Charlotte. So that particular day, I was at the lake all day from 9 to 7. So I got home from taking the boat from Lake Norman to driving 40 minutes to the other lake where I store my boats and my jet skis. I was a one-man shop, so I'm doing 2 trips there. So I finally stored my...
Talking about 2 trips, the same day?
Yeah, to the lake, yeah, because I got my jet skis and my boats, and I have 4 jet skis, so I have to try to accommodate, those renters over there. I got a staff now, but at that time,
you was grinding.
I was grinding, and doing the show at the same time, and it was good revenue, so I wanted to make sure I could maximize it. But yeah, I crashed on the couch because I'm out there all day, and honestly just fell asleep. It was innocent, and
Well, it was innocent to you.
That girl done sat up there, put this whole little thing together.
For a woman, I can understand what AD was speaking of. She created all this with all your favorite snacks and stuff like that. And
Don't even look at it.
He went to sleep. And the thing is, but it also goes into, man and woman, right? And I know I'm cooking for him sometimes, and he'll walk right by and eat it all up and not even say thank you or Mom, great job or whatever, just acknowledgement. And unfortunately, that's how sometimes the man happens to show up. But that doesn't mean that they don't care. That just means that, give them some grace, give them some time. And it took a long time for me to even learn that, calm down, Margarita. Give him some grace. He just walked in. He had a hard day. You never even know what he had to go through, to get back home.
Yes.
And let's not even talk about the safety end of it or anything like that, where he had to, lower his tone so that he can be able to come back through the door. So we have to allow our men some grace. So, again, not taken away from what she's done because I was doing the same thing. But yeah.
So what made you say write what you said write what you don't want,
Right.
and that's the answer?
Because I think that day my spirit felt it was some tension in the room. And I just thought that if they could just, after they were done, go back and just do, what do I want? Bullet point. What don't I want? And then you look at what he wrote, and you look at what you wrote. You should have your answer for decision day if you do it correctly, because people show you who they are in the very beginning. And I'm not being mean or anything like that. I have a little bit of experience, and I have made my own mistakes, and I have looked back and realized the mistakes that I've played, that maybe it wasn't the same as my ex-husband, but at the end of the day, a sin is a sin.
Right.
Okay. And I just know that if they would have done that list, they probably would have gotten to a decision. I don't know what the decision might have been, but at least I felt as though they needed to get back and do some more work at that particular time. And they also need to give each other some grace, and because we're human and we don't have all the answers, no one gives you a playbook and say, you're getting ready to get married. These are the do's, these are the don'ts. It don't happen that way.
And that's what's so interesting about it. And so when you look back at, your own marriage, matter of fact, let's talk about that, about how healing has ensued in since this episode.
Yeah.
Your ex-husband doesn't like doing all this media stuff. Wish I could have had him here. But in that, what has taken place and what has transpired since we saw y'all on television together?
Right. Well, first I like to say that, listen, I know he's been getting a lot of, hate, and they've been blowing up little clips of him, mimics and stuff like that. And that's the man that I did marry, and I married him for a lot of good reasons, and he showed up in those good reasons. Did he make some mistakes? Absolutely. Did I make some? Absolutely. But the way it all played out, and how that came out on public, I didn't know. I didn't find out until when I met Clay at the restaurant. That's when I found out. But it's so interesting. This is what God is, because when I found out at the restaurant, which was in 2023, if I would have mentioned that to my ex-husband, that I knew about the infidelity and the infidelity trips, my ex-husband would not have probably came to the wedding.
I imagine. Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it to him because my spirit was like, that's not your story to tell, Margarita.
Where do you learn that patience from?
You know what? Therapy, spiritual therapy. My late pastor, Pastor Demola from my church, went to therapy with him and his counseling. And it's just like I did the work. I was present.
But why would you say that's not your story to tell when you had a covenant marriage with this person?
Because the marriage that I had with my ex-husband, the contract was broken. Okay. And we were moving not as together, like meaning if I needed something, I would give him a call. It wasn't that. So I was already at a place that I was already healed. And I didn't need to look back for anything. So when I heard that Clay was having that experience, I was like, I didn't say anything. I'm like, that's a conversation. If he told me, He needs to go and tell his father. I'm not going to say, go tell your father, because then I'm being more of a pushy mother trying to push a narrative. And that was what I used to do before. Like when I was hurt, I would either go to one of those 4 and say, can you do this? And as opposed to it coming either from my mouth or the other person's mouth who actually experienced it. And what he experienced was his trauma. I can't go and unpack his trauma and make it my own because it wasn't mine. Even though I was hurt by what I heard, it was his trauma, because when he said it, only thing I went back was like, it made sense, because I saw Clayton struggling with anxiety. And then he would be in his room. He used to have this little stick he used to throw up in the air. We bought it when he was like 3 years old, like, because he loved all sports. He was playing golf. He would take that stick and throw it up. And looking back, when he was a teenager, I was like, I can tell how something is going on, but I didn't know what it really was.
Course.
You don't know what you don't know.
It's your first son, so you trying to learn this little boy.
And not only that, again, I want everyone to know you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And you have to be able to give yourself some grace and not be so hard on yourself. As moms, as aunties, as wives, sisters, friends, we sometimes try to take on the world. We try to sometimes think that we can take care of everybody's battle. We can be able to heal everybody's wound when we really cannot. Okay? The battle is not ours. It belongs to God. And when he unpacked that, it wasn't mine. It was his. And he needs to figure out a way to tell his dad.
Yeah.
And Netflix just got a bonus because I didn't know I was going to say that.
Really?
Did not know. When I saw AD storm off, and then I saw my son, I saw the same face that I used to see when he was a teenager in his room, throwing up the thing and trying to analyze what's going on. I knew what he was battling, and I knew because through conversations that he really wanted to be a husband. Clay loves the institution of marriage.
Yeah.
And as he should, okay? Yeah. Because my ex-husband and I, all the kids had a great time growing up. We did lots of things with them. And yes, my ex has some, shortcomings, but overall it was good, and it broke my heart seeing him. And I just had to confront my ex-husband because I knew exactly where it all came from.
Let me ask you this. Have you always been like that? When you were his wife, would you talk in that tone that you spoke to him on that show?
Absolutely not.
How did you used to talk back in the day, Margarita?
This is radio or TV.
You would just go off? So that's why when you said what you looked at the mistakes that you made in the past, you was one of them women that had a mouth on you?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to say a mouth. It's just that I kind of was one of those women where I worked, I made great money, and at some point, if you're not going to come home, fine. I'm still going to move the way I want to move, and then you're going to get all my wrath, And I was nasty with my conversation sometime. And that's why I was saying that, a sin is a sin.
Yeah.
I wasn't always graceful. Some of the DMs I was receiving, people say, you're so graceful.
Yeah.
I'm hurting. And I'm like, give yourself a break. I was hurting too.
Yeah.
And it was only by the grace of God that I was able to come through it. Yeah. My setbacks. I was just praying every night, God, why am I still here? And God said to me, because you're not releasing it, you are holding on to something that was never yours. And once I released it, which is really forgiving myself, not trying to think that someone had to, say I'm sorry or I apologize. It was me saying, Margarita, I forgive you. Not that I allowed any of the infidelity things to occur, but giving yourself a break and saying that I didn't have all the answers. I didn't show up the way he probably wanted me to show up. And I'm okay if I didn't do X, Y, and Z because I don't have all the answers. So to answer your question, I wasn't always very graceful and calm, but you learn a lot when you've gone through.
What about before you felt like, before the infidelity, who were you as the bride when you look back and you say, well, I made some mistakes where, you're saying that you're doing well financially, you were doing all that stuff. Were you the type of woman that was emasculating to a man?
No.
So when you look at mistakes that you said you made before your heart was broken, I imagine that when you found out that your husband stepped out on you, you're getting a different version of you at that point. Mm-hmm. Who were you in the good days that you look back and say, I could have did this better. I didn't do right, which was the advice that you gave him, which was beautiful advice. Write down pretty much the pros and cons and write that down. And then there's your decision. If you were to write that down back then, if you had the wisdom to do that then, what did you see that you were in that moment that may have not been showing up properly?
Right. Well, first, I think for me, starting a marriage and I didn't have really growing up a mom and a dad that was married. I didn't know what marriage looked like either. But I did know that there were books. There were things that you can do to read and certain things like that. So some of my mistakes, and I'm not going to really I'm going to give myself some grace, not really mistakes, but I think that when we are married sometimes and a child comes right away, we put ourselves into this motherhood and it's all about the child and we don't think about the husband.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, that I kind of put myself into the motherhood and I forgot about my wife. Not that I had wife responsibilities, but
I know exactly what you're saying.
I'm still supposed to be his wife. So that means that I need to make sure I'm dressed for date night, that I show up, not that I'm tired or I'm, putting on sweats. Not that you need to dress up for your husband or, meet him on his level, but men are still leaders and they're hunters. And my opinion, you still need to be able to be that woman that he fell in love with prior to you being his wife.
Right.
Okay. And I'm saying for me, from the time I got married, we got pregnant right away. Then I was just thinking about, oh my God, my baby.
Yeah.
And because my mom did the best she could with what she had, she didn't know a lot about motherhood and stuff. So I read all the books, Dr. Spock. I did the Marie Montessori. I learned everything. And I put all of that craft to be a mother. And I was not the wife. Now, I would do everything I needed to do, but I just wasn't 100%, in my opinion, that wife.
That's good. I mean, that's good self-reflection because that's why you were able to give not only the gems that you share with Clay and AD, but also in the way that you express yourself, even while hurt.
Yeah.
That's why everybody compliments you on that.
Yeah.
Because the first word that came to me, I said, she's a very regal woman. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're just very classy and just elegant and poised. I was like, but then my brain be like, what process does she have to go through to become that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Therapy.
Lots of therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when somebody can respond and find new information and hurt and still respond like that, I said, wow. You know what I'm saying?
I would say for anyone, therapy is good.
Yeah.
sometimes we don't speak a lot about therapy.
Let me ask you why. Again, your generation don't be doing therapy. What made you decide to do therapy?
I did therapy for myself. My ex and we did therapy together. I didn't feel as though we walked away with the same interpretation, and I knew that the marriage was starting to fall apart. And, someone said, Margarita, you need to go to therapy, because I was just dwelling on trying to find things, and it was taking too much of my time trying to play detective gadget all the time.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was exhausting, And then when I went to therapy, once I remember a session with my ex-husband, and the pastor said, she dropped the glass on the floor and it shattered. And she's like, how are we going to put this back together? And then he was like, well, I don't know, you got crazy glue? And she's like, crazy glue? And she's like, what would happen? You put crazy glue? She said, the water would just seep out. She said, so what do you need to do? He's like, get a new glass. So that was her way of saying that we need to start new.
Good.
And I believe, and I always tell Clay and his siblings, God gives us do-overs, okay? And I don't call them do-overs to do the same thing over. I call them do new, okay? And my thing is that I want them to make new problems, not the same problems they've seen their parents go through.
That's good.
Okay?
That's
because
good.
You already had the opportunity to see how it worked out with your dad and I. So I want you to do new. So the fact that he stood on that stage and having that beautiful queen that he was looking at, because if you look at it, the cameras, they are in each other's moment, okay? And it could have went either way. But what I saw God right there in the middle. And that was his way of doing new, not doing the same. So I cannot get upset that he chose to say, I need time to do new, time to work on my healing. And although that might be a hurting thing, it is the best decision for him and for her. Because on one point, she's like, in the reunion, I think she said, I don't want to be, his mom. And that's why you're not. Because he had to be on this healing journey for him. And this is his way of doing it new. God has given him a do-over, a do new. And he's on the right path.
When you heard us say that, did you think that was offensive?
So when I first heard it, I was kind of locked in with trying to maintain my composure, because also too, I knew that the cameras are on, and they were trying to get my facial expression, especially when it kind of brought around the mat thing. So I was more so locked in with more so holding my composure and not coming off essentially like an angry black man.
Yeah.
That, so, I looked a little uncomfortable in the situation, but more so I was just trying to make sure that I just looked even killed. But, when I look back, I was actually with my mom when we watched the reunion, when everybody else watched it. That was the first time I really acknowledged and heard it, because even when she said it, it was like almost like I felt like I said my apology, and I felt like I had a big whoof off of me. So, when I was listening to her, I was more so trying to hear her out, and like not the end of the day, I didn't want to combat it, but looking at back, it was just AD, and I don't think she meant it out of ill will intention, honestly, but it's just the fact that she's been around my mom so much. It's you could have that conversation you could have had maybe to me privately. Don't say that in front of my mom, because it's already embarrassing enough that what I even exposed out there, but then it's you just throwing it out there almost being married for 23 years is not something to celebrate. At the end of the day, it is. And, just saying that, hey, I don't want to be like your mom, I don't want to be divorced. I get that. Nobody wants to have divorce, but
right.
I think the way we're going about it, you wouldn't get there as well. Like you just want to rush into a marriage and then say, oh, I don't want to be like your mom. But like my mom had 23 years.
Yeah.
We just met each other.
Yep.
You know?
When you look back, did you feel a little responsible, like the fact that you, quote unquote, aired out your family's dirty laundry? Did you feel like, gosh, I shouldn't have said that? Or were you like, it needed to be said, I'm standing my truth?
Yeah, my mom could speak on this as well, but I would say that it's probably both sides of it. While I was going through it, I was feeling horrible, like just out of my family business. My family's business is out there for the whole, nation to see, and I felt uncomfortable. I felt like a whistleblower, so I felt really bad about that. And my mom was like the main one saying, like, Clay, like this is what needed to happen.
It did.
To bring this healing. Like you needed to save your father because he was going down his path, and you need to let him know that, like, his son that he champions needed to be the one to let him know that, hey, like you are affecting my growth.
Yeah.
And, like my therapist and, my mom said as well, like liberation is tough. And, I feel like I helped liberate the family to stopping generational curses.
Yes.
Not saying that, hey, we're going to go about, going about this thing the same way. We're going to actually try to make change and listen to my dad and understand some of the decisions that he made. We had a really good family outing where he apologized and my mom got to share her thoughts. My dad got to share her thoughts. And to me, for me to out my family or me to out that situation, if it brought that conversation, then
yes.
It's worth it.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Margarita?
Absolutely. We had a family healing brunch. And
y'all called it that.
We called it that. My youngest daughter organized it, and it was called a family healing brunch.
Oh gosh, I love it.
And we all showed up, and my ex-husband, he brought some good food, breakfast stuff, and before we started, we got in a circle, we held hands, and he said a prayer. And for the very first time, I actually received an apology.
The first time.
He said it before, but sometimes people say I apologize because they are embarrassed that they got caught. This apology resonated with me. I felt the actions behind it. I felt him saying that he was sorry to my heart. And when he said it, I didn't cry because the thing is, I've cried so much that there's no really crying left, right now. But when he said it, I felt it. And I said, thank you. I said, this is an apology that I've been waiting for 20-something years.
How long have y'all been divorced?
We got divorced 2013.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
a little over 10 years.
yeah, and it was actually when we got divorced 2013, I was angry. And I just wanted it to be done because it should have been done sooner.
Yeah.
So I was angry at myself. So it wasn't that I was angry with him. I was angry at myself that I stayed as long as I did. Because I only wanted to stay because of, I love the word marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that I was a wife. I love the fact that we were a union, but we were not.
Yeah. You said you were mad at yourself for staying too long. If you can wave a magic wand, in hindsight been 2020, when you felt like you should have left?
I think everything happens for a reason.
And that's why I want to get back to. That's the reason why I want to know where we think we should have did something, but then ultimately.
Everything happens for a reason. Now, my younger self, when I realized some things was off, I probably would have gotten divorced probably in 2000. Or 2000.
What year would that have been?
2005.
Y'all have been married how many years?
By that time, it was what?
Yeah, it was in 91. So,
well, from 92.
So about 11 years?
12 years.
All right.
Because 91. Yeah.
So about 12 years, you feel like you should have left, and you stayed another 11.
Yeah.
What do you, hindsight being 2020, in those 11 years, what would you had mitigated or thwarted from happening for, in that thing from the good perspective in those 11 years? Was there some 11-year things that happened in that moment where you said, gosh, if I would have done what I thought I should have done, I would have missed this and I would have missed that and I would have missed this from a positive?
This is how I would phrase that question. I'm going to change it up a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. In that 2012, let's just bring it for 2005. Okay. In 2005, I probably should have left because that's when I know God told me to.
Oh, okay.
That he released me.
Okay.
Because I'm someone who always pray for confirmation. Right? And God gave me my confirmation. He said, I gave it to you. But then you're going to stay longer?
Yeah.
He said, you asked, I gave.
Yeah.
It's over. The contract is over. You can leave. And I stayed. So I was angry at myself.
For being disobedient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For not paying attention. Okay. For knowing what I want versus what I do not want.
There it is.
Okay. And if I'm doing the lesson that I fast forward gave them the lesson,
Yep.
then I would have cut it in 2005. But I did not. So that's why I was saying that we have to give ourselves grace. And when I had said for him and AD to give themselves grace, I was thinking of myself as well.
Yeah.
Because I gave myself grace because I made mistakes, and mistakes that I made, I was disobedient to God. And sometimes when you're disobedient to God, you stay in the darkness, you stay in the wilderness longer than you should have been in.
You better preach.
Okay. And I stayed in the wilderness a long time since all my business is out there. And I didn't have to be there that long. But when I decided to take matters in my own hand and say, I'm going to stay, God. And God is like, you asked me something and I gave it to you and you're going to now do the opposite. And I went through it. But I came out okay because he was always with me. I used to pray and say, why am I still here? 2015, why am I still here? Why am I still here? And God's like, you haven't learned your lesson. You're here because you wanted to be here.
Yeah, that's real. That's accountability.
That's accountability.
Yeah.
And it was, I needed to make sure, when I always say to my kids, accountability starts with you.
Yeah.
See it, own it, and do it. The Oz principle. I take everything like I'm dealing with my clients. I was not accountable. I was not responsible. I was only thinking about Margarita and what it would look like to everyone else. When God says that you only need to know what it looks like through my eyes.
There it is.
Through my lens. So at the end of the day, I am not upset with how this came about because it was supposed to be.
It was supposed to happen.
My ex-husband is a good man. And I believe, like I've said so many times, that I believe my Heavenly Father sent his son to get his father back to where he needed to be. Because if we continue to move in a very dishonest and, ways that we keep using and abusing the queens and the females that God's daughters, it's not going to end up good. So the fact that he said no to that beautiful queen, he had to say no.
He had to.
And in that moment, I didn't know what I was like, knowing what I know right now, but I know he had to.
Yep.
Only thing I knew is that I felt the hurt. And then the conversation with my ex-husband, which went crazy, was just like a snap, but a graceful snap.
What I saw in that moment, it resonated with my spirit to the point to where I just knew what God was doing. I know what a dispensation is. And so I know that when I see certain things, I'll be like, this was a God moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it resonated with my spirit to the point I immediately DM'd Clay. And I was like, I forgot what I said to you. What did I say? I'm proud of you, King, for doing this or whatever. You know, I said, I'm proud. Like, I even see nobody else's comments, what people were saying. I don't care what nobody else said. I know what that spoke to me. And so I DM'd him and said that. Then I also said, I don't want to be a person, and I end up hitting him up again and said, and this is before I ever thought about having him on the podcast. I was just letting them know as a man, I'm proud of you. Then I started hearing all the rhetoric. I went and shared the post that I recorded that powerful scene, and then I posted that, and I said, I don't want to be somebody that just celebrates you in your DMs. I don't want nobody to be like, yeah, the terrorist, he's saying that, but I want to know, with everybody been negative towards me, could he say it publicly?
Right.
Oh, so I can stand on it. I don't care. Yes, I'm gonna say that. And I said that in the post because you never know, and this is what I try to encourage people and give people reference to. You never know what that person may be going through. You don't know. People, after coming through the pandemic, suicide is at an all-time high.
Absolutely.
You may say the very comment that pushes that person over the edge. Or you can be utilized by God, that when the person says, don't nobody care about me, God, and a stranger says, listen, I see you, King. He says something that was very profound at the very beginning. He said that as a young boy, yes, the home was really great and he felt seen in his household, but he wanted to be seen by strangers. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be seen by his peers, his classmates. He wanted to be seen. And oftentimes when we're struggling, wanting to be seen, we just need to know that we matter. We need to know that somebody sees us. And I've always said, I want to be the light. I want to be a light when someone is experiencing darkness, to be the person that says, I see you. Absolutely. And so that's why I reached out to you, Clay. And then as people start commenting, I see you bringing them to the yellow couch. In all honesty, I'll be transparent because I'm always going to be transparent. I had a fear of bringing you on the yellow couch. Why? Because I had another episode where I had this guy, Derek Jackson, who women was like, he is toxic. He was this relationship guru and all this. I brought him on the podcast. Women turned against me. So then that trauma came to me. But Holy Spirit, I feel like you're leading me to bring him on my podcast, but the trauma of just last year of bringing this other guy on there started making my doggone revenue on YouTube cut in half. I said, Lord, I just bought the new house. I don't have no time to be going through this, Jesus. God said, do it. He said, I don't want you ever seeking the approval of man. If I be for you, who can be against you? He said, so I want you to always keep your heart posture right. You saw this other king, you can connect. You know if he's full of crap, or you know that he's full of integrity. And what I saw from you is a man full of integrity. I read comments, people like, he just know what to say. He's just whatever. And I just want to tell them, whatever you feel that. It's not my job to change that. My job is to create a safe space for brothers like you that have made those strong decisions that didn't go with what was popular, and didn't try to hide and be like, I'm gonna marry you, but I'm finna have a couple of kids on the side behind you, and then you're gonna find out about it. Now you look a complete fool. That I said, you know what? I like the fact that he stood 10 toes down on it. And I don't think you believed that you would get this level of pushback, but you did, and you're still standing in it. And you're not running. You're not being some coward. You're saying, listen, I'm going to stand on it, and I'm going to keep being accountable. Every time you do an interview, I hear nothing but accountability. I don't hear you ever bash at AD. I don't ever hear you say, well, now the reason why I really did it, what y'all didn't get to see, is because right before we went out there, she sent me this text and said such. You don't never say nothing like that. He said, this is an amazing woman. Matter of fact, what was really tripped out to me is that you put yourself in vulnerability again on the reunion where they asked you, would you still want to be with her? And you said yes. Right. That's some level of vulnerability, because the first thing, and this is why I say we got to be careful about the influence we hear. Even if AD really wanted to be with you, she wouldn't, because she feels like she would be letting everybody else down and she would be a fool to be with you. And this is what I want to say to that young queen. Don't dare make a decision on your future based upon the approval of other people. That's what I just want to say to you, AD. Not even saying if that door is still open for y'all to rekindle, but I'm just saying don't ever make a decision based on other people or you feel like you'll let other people down. And so what I love about this journey, this experiment, this experience also is that we have an opportunity to look in real time, two souls, two people who had good intentions that it didn't work out the way that they wanted to work out, but is given reference and conversation for us to have so that we can go back and unpack our own trauma. We can go back and say, who am I mismanaging the heart of somebody? Am I not showing up holistically in this relationship?
Right.
It's people that's married right now that need to be having some conversations with their spouse.
Absolutely.
They should be able to say, now listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I felt this before we got married. I felt this or whatever. And we need to have this conversation so that we can break this glass and get a new glass. You know, these are moments that have to happen. And so I want to encourage everybody that's watching this podcast, that's listening to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere you consume your podcast, is to go ahead and let's build. We always hear about generational curses. It's time for us to reverse that and get some generational blessings. Amen. Where we can have some real conversations in our kids. It's people that stayed married or are staying married to people that they don't even love no more, that they don't even want. They literally wait. I've heard this lady DM me one day, I ain't gonna lie, that she said she waiting for her husband to die.
Oh, Lord. Right.
And so I just want to encourage everybody to make sure that they be in the marriage for the right reason, because this is a covenant ordained by God and we got to live holistically.
Amen.
What else would you like to add as we wrap up?
For me, I'm just glad that Love is Blind season 6 is done.
Why you snicker over there, Clay?
It was because
your mom over it, ain't it? She said, I'm done.
It was produced in 2023.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's being aired now. So everyone gets to chime in, and some people don't understand that it was done last year.
Yeah.
So they want to pin him to the cross this year.
Mm-hmm.
But it was done behind him.
So you're getting mad at the old version of somebody in real time.
It was the past.
Yeah.
And this is the present. It wasn't supposed to be. That's why it's not going towards the future. Okay. It's over. Because some of the DMs, the hate, the lies, the people, you know, everyone wants to be a detective. Everyone wants to be a doctor. Everyone wants to be an attorney. And it's stop. You know, he's received a lot of hate.
Yeah.
And
even to the tune of threats
and
over
then,
his life.
And then it's just too much. And for me, my story is out there for everyone to put on their page, for them to, you know, rewind over and over again. And I wasn't part of
the cast.
They didn't cast me. I was supposed to just come as a support, and they got a freebie because that's just the way
you're gonna be authentic. You're gonna show up,
and it's cameras everywhere. It's cameras under your table, is under your chairs.
Oh, really?
It's everywhere picking up. Chair. It's picking up your conversation. And all I would like to say is that it's time for the temperature to be reduced. It's time. Everyone who has been on the show, they all need to get some grace. They're humans.
Yes.
A lot of them are going through it currently right now.
Yeah.
And for what? It was an part of the show is entertainment.
Yep.
And the show is called Love Blind. It's called Love is Blind. It's not called Love is Marriage. It's called Love is Blind. So you go through an experiment, and then when you get to the decision, you either say yes or no. He's not the only man that has said no at the altar. There's been females that have said no, as well as males. Mm-hmm. they have people that didn't get to the altar that's going through it mentally.
Yep.
Okay. And it's messing up their physical wellness. And people don't realize, what's going on. They're like, oh, some people say, oh, they signed up for it. Well, you have a television, you have a computer, and maybe you should just hit the power button and cut everything off right now, because the noise is too much. It's too much. And so I just pray going forward that, we can just kind of reduce the noise. And if everyone thinks they want to make a comment, and I always say to my kids, before you say it out of your mouth, let it go through a couple of, filters. And if you think you have to say something negative, say less and swipe.
That's good.
Everything doesn't have to be put in a comment.
Yep. Clay, anything you want to say as we wrap up?
You mentioned a lot of good points, and I appreciate you having me here, to have this platform to speak on it. And, like I said, I do believe that, although AD got her heart broken, and I just want people to know that that was never my true intention, and that AD is an amazing person, and I do look at her as a wifey type girl, and she deserves to be a wife. And at that point, I just wasn't ready for that. And I'm putting in the work to become that husband, so I never will be in that position again. And I do think that God has had me out here to speak on this and also let other men know that, these are things that we struggle with, and these are things that we need to do in order so we could be in this godly-like form where we could be a husband and lead, women to the promised land in a sense, and especially Black men. I think Black men, we need to have these healings and these platforms where we can express ourselves and be vulnerable and not be attacked by everybody. So, I want to be able to get in these spaces where I can advocate for Black men's mental health and be able to, be on here and articulate myself. So I know when you mention points and saying like, hey, Clay, like, you've been getting a lot of hate, and people even saying that I'm doing like, going on these platforms, I'm speaking, but like I said, I think I'm meant to do this.
That's right.
I do believe that we need a voice, and we need to speak on this type of stuff. And Black men, we don't need to be, our voice doesn't need to be hindered and sheltered anymore. We need to be able to express ourselves in a healthy way, and also express to Black women that we want to marry them, Right. And that we're not trying to, disrespect them. We want that household to be strong. And I'm going to go back to the breaking the curse of Willie Lynch. Well, maybe I'm just a catalyst of breaking that curse.
Yep.
That's what we're here for. So, that's pretty much it.
Margarita, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I know this was a lot of work for you to be hopping on planes and doing that. Me and Clay talked about it. He said, yeah, my mom ain't used to all that or whatever. He said, I was an athlete, so I'm used to flying and coming in. Clay gonna fly home and go to work to, the next day. Y'all just set to have probably about 2.5 hours of sleep, and then y'all right back on the plane. Yeah. So I thank y'all for the sacrifice. I thank y'all for finding your welcome, and thank you for finding value in the Dear Future Wifey podcast to avail your voice to speak this healing into our community. So listen, y'all give it up for Clay and Margarita Gravesande.
Thank you. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned to the end for a letter to my future wifey.
Been writing these love letters to you.
Ladarian, thrusted suddenly into Child Protective Services in 2015. My nephew, Black, a boy. The likelihood of being adopted outside of kinship, slim to none. Armani, 16 years old, Black, a boy, with 5 years in the foster care system before I even knew his name. The likelihood of ever being adopted, yep, you guessed it, slim to none. While Ladarian and Armani were trying to survive and barely thrive in an overpopulated and underfunded foster care system, I was living my own life, doing well professionally. Having been a single father with a daughter who at that point was doing well in college, it was my time to live my life, right? Wrong. I felt unsettled, tireless, agitated. There are just too many of our Black children stuck in ambiguity and in the limbo of the foster care system.
In 2017, I legally adopted my nephew, Ladarian. Fast forward to 2019, I had no ties to this other young king, but I felt God instructed me to adopt him also, and I obeyed. Starting over with parenting should have been enough, right? Working with various foster care and adoption agencies to help bring awareness to the countless young Black kings in the foster care system should have decreased my agitation, right? Joining the board of directors of Advantage Adoption, an organization that helps find permanent adoptive homes for children in foster care, should have led to some type of resolve, right? No, not at all. None of it felt like I had done enough. I now realize that every one of those experiences was laying the fundamental foundation for my life's mission, Kingdom Royale. Kingdom Royale will be a luxury, state-of-the-art home for foster boys. Our first location will be in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We will utilize the whole person approach that instills identity, empowers them to advocate for themselves, and enlightens them regarding new perspectives and limitless options that they thought were impossible. Though the young kings will attend the local public schools that are in proximity to Kingdom Royale, our at-home curriculum will broaden their worldview through participating in the arts, attending various cultural events, learning about and engaging in multifaceted discussions about current events and even relevant historical context, introducing them to gardening and landscaping and even caring for our animals on our farm and on-site stables. We just launched our Startup Capital campaign with the goal of raising $2.8 million. Now, why $2.8 million? Well, in 2017, I created a web series in which I performed random acts of kindness for targeting the homeless community. One of the most notable successes was that one of the videos went viral, garnering 28 million views. However, one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't raise a single dollar to help in implementing a more sustainable plan for the homeless community. So throughout the years, with much remorse, I reflected on not maximizing that moment. I knew if at that time, just 10% of the viewers donated $1, we would have raised at least $2.8 million that could have really established long-term support for the homeless community, or at least started a long-term initiative to do so. This is my do-over. This is our new beginning. Together, we can attack this at the root by specifically helping our homeless Black boys who are already disproportionately represented in the American foster care system. I'm Laterras R. Whitfield. I've been nominated for 3 regional Emmys documenting my work with the homeless as well as my personal adoption journey. Despite those accolades, the greatest award for me is truly providing the infrastructure for a transformed life. Visit kingdomroyale.com for more details. Crown a king and make a donation today.
Now, here's my favorite part of the podcast where I speak to my future wifey. Dear future wifey, I'm reminded of the age-old adage that love is blind. Indeed, in the throes of passion and infatuation, it's easy to overlook flaws and imperfections, to see only the rosy hue of romance. However, as we stand on the threshold of a lifelong commitment, I believe it's important to acknowledge a fundamental truth. While love may be blind, marriage is crystal clear. Marriage is more than just a declaration of love. It's a sacred bond, a promise to stand by each other's side through thick and thin, to support each other's dreams, and to weather life's storms together. It requires honesty, communication, and a willingness to confront the realities of life with open hearts and clear minds. As we embark on this journey together, let us remember that while love may have brought us together, it's the clarity of vision that will sustain us through the years to come. Let us approach marriage with eyes wide open, ready to embrace both the joys and challenges that lie ahead. And let us never forget that true love isn't blind. It's a beacon of light that illuminates our path, guiding us towards a future filled with hope, happiness, and endless possibilities. Your future hubby. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dear Future Wifey podcast. Remember, be lit, live intentionally and transparently, and don't stop loving. Make sure to subscribe to our Dear Future Wifey YouTube channel. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. We welcome your support. Simply share our podcast with your friends and family.